Hello and welcome to this broadcast from the Times of India. I am Nalin Mehta. The Prime Minister's second ministerial reshuffle has, we've been told, been undertaken after a very rigorous process of performance evaluation. The big question is this reshuffle going to increase his government's efficiency, or is it a missed opportunity? With me here is Sanjeev Singh of the Times of India, who's been tracking this development for us. Sanjeev, what's your immediate take on the number of ministers that have been brought in and the quality of these ministers?
See, as far as quality is concerned, of course, we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. But what he's done is that they have the academic qualifications, but as far as, having some sort of experience in government is concerned, they've been slightly, relatively new faces have come. Although you have the likes of Faggan Singh Kuliste and Vijay Goyal, who have actually served as central ministers in the previous NDA government. But the fact
Vijay Goyal, of course, from Delhi.
Yeah, and S.S. Ahluwalia is an old hand in Parliament. Ramdas Atwale also being an old hand. So there is some experience coming into this cabinet. But the fact that, while one expected one expected to see more faces, more new faces.
Because one of the big critiques of the Modi government so far has been the inability to bring outside talent from outside the government into big important positions. Like Manmohan Singh, for example, got in Nandan Nilekani, for example. Yeah. And even a Prime Minister like that was quite hobbled in his political, in terms of the political influence that he had. So, is this reshuffle, is it going to ignite that kind of excitement?
Well, as I said, take the likes of Mr. Anil Dave. He's an environmentalist, he's an author, he's written books. MJ Akbar, we all know, is a journalist. So, then the fact that Mr. Mahendranath Pandey, he's from UP, he has a PhD in Hindi. So they have the academic qualifications, but what, one is expecting is that the sort of delivery in governance, is it going to get any better? Yeah. So that is the question mark that one sees, because most of these faces, if you see, relatively new faces. Anupriya Patel, of course, is the youngest member in the Council of Ministers. She hails from UP and she's from Apna Dal. So a lot, that is Prime Minister Modi's actually put a lot on stake by giving this opportunity to these faces.
So Sanjeev, if we can look at some of the big political messages from this reshuffle. First, in terms of the BJP versus its allies, what's your take on that?
Well, for all practical purposes, this is basically a reshuffle within the BJP. Yeah. Because even as far as you have Anupriya Patel from the Apna Dal, and reports suggest that she has also said that her party will merge with the BJP before the elections in UP. And you have Mr. Ramdas Atwale from the RPI.
So, and the Shiv Sena has been cut out because they've been having friction with the BJP, which essentially mostly BJP leaders, with the exception of two leaders.
Yeah, so Shiv Sena has gone ahead and said that, this just shows new faces within the BJP, not of the NDA. So they've put forward their criticism of the same.
What about in terms of if you look at the cabinet or the Council of Ministers as a whole, in terms of its average age, in terms of its political, in terms of its demographic composition, how much does that change with today's changes?
Not much, because if you see, out of 19 new faces, 14 ministers have been born either in the 40s or the 50s.
Right.
So they're all above 57 years of age.
Right.
Anupriya, of course, is the youngest. She's born in 1981. So that makes her 35 years of age. And Mr. Mansukh Mandaviya, who's born in 1972. Yeah. So apart from these two, really, most of them are over, as I said, 14 ministers are over 57 years of age. So that leaves a bit of a question mark on the efficacy, if you don't have that sort of a background.
So in a young country, it's not that very young ministers have been brought in. That's the point that you're making.
Well, 41% of India is below 20 years of age. So, there is bound to be some sort of disconnect if proper monitoring is not there.
So on that thought, what about the this reshuffle, of course, precedes assembly elections that we're going to. UP is a very important state, which is going to go to elections next year. Very crucial for the BJP, of course, as a sort of semi-final before 2019. What does this tell us about the social composition of the cabinet, and particularly the representation of Uttar Pradesh?
See, as far as the new reshuffle is concerned, we've got 2 ministers from scheduled tribes and 5 ministers from scheduled caste. We've got 2 members from the minority community and 2 women leaders we've got. Yeah. maximum representation has been given to UP, which has 3,
Right.
and Gujarat also 3.
Anupriya being one of them.
Yeah, so now it takes the total of ministers representing UP to 16 out of 18. So that just shows you the sort of importance that they've given. Also the fact that, if we can go back to Anupriya Patel.
Yeah.
See, the focus of BJP has basically been on how to get the OBC vote in the state, the non-Yadav OBC vote. And there, Anupriya Patel is likely to play a bigger role because, she's an OBC face and it could be a counter as a Kurmi leader to Beni Prasad Verma and the others. So,
Do you get the sense that in terms of what about what the Prime Minister could have done, which a lot of people might have expected, what about the missed opportunities? So, for example, only Prakash Javadekar has been promoted to cabinet rank, and we are told this follows a very rigorous process of performance evaluation. But what about other good performing ministers who are perceived by various rankings to be well performing?
see, last week Prime Minister Modi had held, long meetings, review meetings with various ministers and reviewed their performance. He had also gone ahead and seen, the sort of budget allocation given to each ministry and how much money was utilized out of that. So it was quite a rigorous process, but there is a general feeling that some of the performing ministers could have been promoted. And as the slide shows, if you talk about Piyush Goyal in the Power Ministry or Nirmala Sitharaman in Commerce.
What about
Also
Jayant Sinha?
Yeah, of course. And Dharmendra Pradhan. So they're all relatively young faces who have done well. They've got a good track record. So there is a sense of that, maybe perhaps Narendra Modi missed the bus.
Yeah.
If he was to prepare a team for the 2019 elections, if he had actually given them, more space and opportunity and promoted them.
So that could have been, that's one of the questions people are asking. One other thing, Sanjeev, is that we're getting some comments, and one of the comments is that, look, UP has been given adequate representation, obviously looking ahead at the UP elections. What about Punjab? Punjab is also a crucial battle line state where the BJP has a lot at stake in, especially with AAP making inroads.
I think, as far as Punjab is concerned, the strategy of the BJP is still not quite clear because they are in alliance with the Shiromani Akali Dal, which is of course the major player in that state.
Yeah.
So, if perhaps this could be just another thinking that if they had brought in more people from Punjab, then they would have to bring in someone from the Shiromani Akali Dal as well. So that perhaps explains the reason that why for lack of any clear strategy, which is why they avoided these things. If they have to include someone, maybe it can be done at a later stage because
One last word, Sanjeev, on the ministers who've been dropped. We've spoken about the ministers who've been brought in, those who've been upgraded. Among those who've been dropped, what do you make of these names? I mean, Ramshankar Kateria, for example, has been in the news for all the wrong reasons recently. In Agra for making I mean, if you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so, after that VHP worker was killed, we saw some sort of, controversial speech given by the minister at that point of time, which of course he later backtracked and said that, he had not made that speech. So he's been in the controversy. Nihal Chand, of course, we know has been, there have been reports that he's been accused of being involved in a rape case.
Yeah.
And similarly, you have Mr. Mansukh Bhai and Mr. Kundaria from Gujarat, so perhaps to give a new look to two ministers in Gujarat. So that could be the main reason for them dropping. But there was also this thing, if I can add, Nalin, is the fact that, there was a sort of limit on the age limit of ministers, which is not, of course, official, but the 75 years tagline. So maybe, that could have been followed. You have ministers like Mr. Kalraj Mishra and Nazma Heptullah who have actually reached that limit, who have reached that stage. So, but you have elections in UP, and perhaps that is why Kalraj Mishra.
So the bottom line, Sanjeev, is that this is a government that came into power promising a great deal of development and progress. That's what Akshay Din was about. And now, with about 2.5 years left for the next election, the Modi government is going to be judged on what it delivers on those promises. Is this Council of Ministers the team that Prime Minister Modi needs to deliver it, or is it a missed opportunity in your final analysis?
Well, one has to wait and see how they perform. We can only wish them well, and hope that they perform up to the level that Prime Minister Modi wants, because it was a rigorous process, as we've said earlier. So it could also be a reflection that perhaps Prime Minister Modi wants himself to be in the driver's seat and push the entire agenda of the NDA ahead. So that is what one would make of it. That Prime Minister Narendra Modi wanting to be the
primary driver of the government,
wanting to be the central theme, and having his own people, because they seem to be qualified people, except that they lack experience in governance.
Several of them who've been brought in have got experience as state ministers, especially the ones from Gujarat, for example.
Yeah, so there are about 5, if I can tell you, Mr. Mahendranath Pandey, Mr. Ramesh, Purushottam, so there are 5 people who have worked as ministers in various state governments. So they do have that thing, but as far as governance is concerned, 6 of them are lawyers out of these 19. So they have that academic background, but it appears that by bringing in relatively unknown faces, perhaps Prime Minister Narendra Modi thinks they will be able to deliver better.
Right. Well, on that note, we'll call a halt on this discussion. Please keep watching the Times of India for live updates.